Boston College football's most important game in 2026 is going to come very early. It's a game they have to win.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day. I'm your host, AJ Black of Eagle Insider, part of the 247 Network. I've been covering Boston College for over a decade. If you're looking for Boston College news, analysis, and details, you are in the right place. Locked On Boston College is a free daily Boston College podcast available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. On today's show, I want to get into what's going on with a lot of BC's ex-coaches. They've been going everywhere. I'll tell you where the latest buzz is on some of them and what jobs they've taken. I want to talk about Kenyatta Watson's recruiting strategy with this real emphasis on Georgia. Can they bring in top recruits? I'll explain why I think they may be able to. And let's get into the biggest question of the day. What is the biggest game on BC's schedule in 2026? Now, the easy answer you could always say is every game's important. And you know what? You'd be right. I can't argue with you there. But I am going into this season with the same mentality I had in 2024, where 2024, I wanted to see BC against Florida State on the road and to see what kind of culture and game Bill O'Brien was going to bring to Boston College. And right out of the gate, he impressed, right? In hindsight, it's not as good of a win now, but you went on the road against a top 25 Florida State team and you beat them handily. This year, my pick is the first game of the season. You have BC football sometimes has a sense of mediocrity around them because, you know, they haven't been able to get over 7 wins and it feels like they've been kind of in a rut for a while. But there's a different kind of stench after going 2-10. And as much as injuries and other factors played into the outcome, the fact is numbers don't lie. You went 2-10. That can be used against you on the recruiting trail. It's going to make it harder for a lot of other things to happen. You need to go out and set the tone in game 1. And that is going to be a road game against Cincinnati. Now, this game is going to be incredibly important for a number of reasons. You're playing a Power 5 team that went to a bowl this year. They played in the Liberty Bowl. You know, they had a great quarterback, Brendan Sorsby, who is now on his way to Texas Tech. You know, they're in a better space than you are. Now, Cincinnati, I think, is a little bit of, a paper tiger. I don't think they're as good of a team as you may think. They lost their quarterback. I don't think they're bringing in a guy that's anywhere near as good. But hey, BC went 2-10 last year. Who can say anything is, you should feel confident about anything? I'm not saying they should feel confident. I'm just saying if everything BC did to get themselves ready with the changes in staffing, with the changes in quarterback, with any sort of change in strategy and game plan, this could be a game that they could win. And what better way to shut up all the crap from last year than to beat Cincinnati and to do it on the road? Remember, Bill O'Brien has won 2 games on the road since he's taken over at BC. The game against Florida State, which I just mentioned, basically the bookends of his career so far. The first game against Florida State and the last game he just played against Syracuse. Now, both of those teams were bad, really bad teams. Florida State was terrible, and Syracuse last year was hurt and terrible. And so you're playing a Cincinnati team that's better. You beat them. You start off your season on the right foot. You show, whether it's Mason McKenzie or Grayson Wilson, whoever the starting quarterback is, maybe they get out there, they have a good game. You're starting to feel a little bit more confident. This is a very different experience than the last 2 years. The last 2 years you played Florida State, but your first couple games, you usually play a Duquesne or a Fordham. You played Fordham this year, and that really didn't give you much of anything. You didn't see the issues that you had. Everything is going to be laid out when you play Cincinnati. Every issue and strength that you have is going to be crystal clear because you're playing a Power Four conference team and on the road. So this game is going to be absolutely critical for BC. And I love it if they win it too, because what better way to start your season than beating them? And then you return home, you play Dylan Larnigan and Rutgers. You win that game, you're 2-0. You could go just playing things out here. I know I'm being a little bit optimistic, but if you could pull off winning those two games, you then go off and play Maine, things could be in a much more positive direction. However, if BC were to lose that game, say they start the season off, they go on the road and they lose, and then they return home and they play Rutgers and they lose, things are going to get pretty hairy pretty quick because you need to pile on some wins. So starting that season off, playing Scott Satterfield, who's not a great, he's not a great coach, and you can win this game. This is going to be critical. You get some confidence in your players. You have all these new guys that are going to be out there. Your two deep is going to be filled with players that many people are not going to be aware of. And honestly, if I was BC, they're not going to have a spring game. They're going to try to keep everything airtight because you're going into an opposing stadium with a team that no one knows about. You don't know who's going to play. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they lock the media out of these practices so we don't say anything. Like I wouldn't be surprised. It just wouldn't surprise me, right? But if they don't know anything that's going on with this team, like it's going to be a complete surprise, and they can catch teams off guard. It's a good way to start your year off. So Cincinnati, the last time they played them, what was it, 2019 in the Birmingham Bowl after they fired Steve Adazio and you had head coach Richie Gunnell. And I believe that was the game that AJ Dillon sat out, and he was like the lifeblood of that team. BC has played Cincinnati quite a bit. This will be the 9th game between the two. It's split evenly 4-4. Cincinnati's won the last two, and it goes back to the Big East. Now they're in the Big 12. If BC can win this type of game, I feel like this would be the kind of momentum that they desperately need. It changes the script. It changes what people are saying about you. It gets you off those graphics, the bottom 25 immediately, and gives you some breathing room when you start to get in and some confidence that you can win some of these tougher games. So to me, Cincinnati is a game that I have as the biggest game on BC's schedule. In a moment, I want to switch gears for a moment. We're going to do a little bit of switching gears here to talk about recruiting. I want to talk about the new strategy BC football has, and I want to ask a big question. Will it work? I'll explain what I mean by that in just a moment.
I'm Kalia Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. Number 1 ranked UConn dominated Tennessee 96-66, turning a halftime tie into a historic win and avenging last season's loss by delivering the largest margin in the rivalry's history. AZ Fudd had 27 points and Sarah Strong added 26 as the Huskies remain perfect on the season, reminding everyone why they are the reigning national champions. In the Big Ten, number 2 UCLA rolled past number 8 Iowa 88-65, powered by 22 points from Angela Dukeledge and a huge advantage in the paint, staking their claim as a national threat. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes, and coming back for more every time. Mazda puts that same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
Locked On Boston College, AJ Black here. And again, I want to let you guys know about our Everydayers Club. If you've been just considering it, I think it's a great time to sign up. You're going to get inside access. Anytime I have a BC thought, I get on that text and I text all my everydayers. You get to talk back to me. I respond. There's our group chat, which I would love to see more of you on for the Discord. That's part of our basic tier. If you just want to get in on that tier, I'd love to have I want a kick in Discord channel. It's just basically a big group chat. Would love to have more of you guys on that. And all you have to do is click on that link below and sign up. I hope you join. I know a lot of you have already done so, and I want to see more of you on there. So let's talk about the class of 2027. Now, this is going to be a new world, I think, in terms of recruiting for BC, because you have a new basically a whole new system in how you're doing high school recruiting. You have your GM, and I saw earlier this year there's someone reporting this is the first GM. It's not their first GM. They had Spencer Dickow in years past, but they have a new one, Kenyatta Watson, and he comes with a lot of hype. He worked for Florida State and Georgia Tech and Under Armour and Auburn. He's got a rich history down the South. He knows everybody. I mean, talking to these recruits, like every single person seems to know Kenyatta Watson. That was a big get. That's in terms of just what he brings, it's a big addition to your recruiting group. You're going to be able to open doors, hopefully, that you weren't able to open before. And more importantly, the bigger question will be then, can you close them and close on the kids? Not close the door on the kids. You know what I mean? But you have that, right? And then you added Julian Rowe Cohen, who moved up from director of player personnel. He was director of player personnel earlier this offseason, but he was director of high school recruiting before, and now he's assistant GM. And I think they're kind of adjusting some of the roles around. Brian Rosser, I think, could probably, I think I saw he got an upgrade too. So they're getting a bigger group. Now, I said to my everydayers, I talked about the state of Massachusetts recruiting and how I didn't think this is going to be a big group. The one group that I'm very interested to see how Boston College resonates with this new recruiting pitch is the state of Georgia and the state of Florida. This is the stomping ground for Kenyatta Watson. Watson is from that, had recruited that area. He knows everybody. Like if you look, and I retweet a lot of them, and then I've had discussions with some of the kids. I put those up on Eagle Insider. Some of the these recruits that are at like Buford and North Gwinnett and some of these other big schools in Georgia, and then down in Florida, you've got Miami, Carroll City, and Plantation, and these other big time schools in like Florida, in Florida, like St. Thomas Aquinas, like they're everywhere, right? And so you see all these offers, and many of these kids, when I research them, they have big offer lists. There's multiple schools looking at them. It's not like, diamonds in the roughs for all of these recruits. And it's not like low hanging fruit either. It's not like you're recruiting against like Georgia State and Kennesaw State for these kids. Like you have kids with offers from Duke and Vanderbilt and Wake Forest and North Carolina. Like they have good offer lists, which then begs the question, can a team that is going off a 2-10 season with limited NIL funds, up north, we have to be honest about this, right? You have kids that are dealing with living in Georgia, coming up to 2 feet of snow and negative 10-degree wind chill. Like all of these factors come together to make me wonder, how will this pitch in this system work, given these parameters? I'm going to say I'm a little skeptical at first. And again, with everything, you could tell me everything and tell me that this is going to work. And that's great. But I'm becoming, as I get older, I get more and more cynical. Prove it to me. Prove me that this is going to work. Now, the next step for these kids, offers go out. They're like, like you go to Times Square and the people are handing out like, the flyers to the shows or, whatever that's going on. Everyone gets one. It's almost like that with recruiting, right? Down in some of these schools like Buford and whatnot, and Grayson, it feels like any kid that is okay is going to get an offer. And so it's not the biggest barometer of like, will they come here? The next big step that we're going to wait to see, and this is the part that's going to fascinate me, is will they get them on campus for unofficials? That means the kid's going to have to pay to come up here by themselves. That's a good indicator that there's some interest, right? If you get your parents to pay to send you to Boston so you can watch a spring practice, that shows to me that it's more than just you just got an offer. These kids are like, I want to see more. And to be fair, many of these recruits don't end up at BC, but it gives you a better gauge on whether they're like, oh, this is a great offer, and this is an offer I can just throw on Twitter and make myself look better. So that's going to be a big key. Which of these recruits that they offered are going to actually come up to visit? Now, Watson clearly is making a big deal out of this because he's already tweeting out the practice schedule. They have, I think it's 15 practices between, it looks like March 10th and April, like the middle of April, like usual, and no spring game, which we already know. So if you have that, you wonder if that's going to be the case. The biggest piece that you're going to see, and to see if they really are interested, is do they take official visits? Now, I'm very interested to see if he has the kind of impact that Fran Brown had at Syracuse. Like, I don't think Fran Brown is the best coach in the world. I mean, O'Brien has pantsed him twice now in the last 2 games. But credit when credit's due, Fran Brown has opened doors to Syracuse that they never had in the last, since basically this modern era. I honestly hope Watson can do the same thing, that these kids that you never thought would choose BC really connect with him and then give BC a chance. That would be huge for Boston College. I've always been for the folks that always are yelling at me like, why aren't there more Massachusetts recruits going to BC? Yeah, that's part of it, but I would much rather get 15 kids from the Southeast that come up here and are good than trying to like make Massachusetts recruits that are not fits to fit into that square peg. So I think this is going to be very interesting. I'm very curious the caliber of recruit that will actually take that next step. It's one thing to give them an offer. That doesn't mean anything. It's the next to see which of these kids that he's offered, and it must be 200 plus in the last month. Like he's just like, it's like boom, 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 boom. And everyone you see, they're thanking Kenyatta Watson. Which of these recruits and what level of Georgia, Florida area are going to actually take this offer and come on up? That's going to be fascinating. And I honestly, I said this before, I thought the Texas emphasis that we had in the last like 5 years under Daryl Wyatt, I had soured on that real quick because A, you had a ton of decommitments from that area. B, the kids that you actually got here, most of them didn't do anything. And C, most of them ended up just transferring out because it was just too far away. And I'm glad you see a few, like Julian Rowe-Cohen's offered a few out there. I saw some in like the Dallas area, but it's nothing like what Wyatt was doing. Wyatt was like everywhere down there. I think the Georgia Florida connection will be a little stronger and you won't have as much flip-flopping as you did with Texas. That's just my gauge, because there's schools obviously in those areas down in the South, but in Florida and Georgia, but even they are a different breed than Texas. Texas is crazy. So that's just my thoughts there. Now, in a moment, I wanted to just dive in and just give my thoughts on all these old former BC coaches that are heading elsewhere. I'm going to just dive in and just talk all about it in just a moment. There's nothing like being in an NBA arena. The crowd, the energy, the moment, getting tickets to that part has always been tricky. That's why Game Time has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without the hassle. It puts the advantage back where it belongs with the fans. I pulled out the Game Time app, picked an NBA game, and had tickets within minutes. I love the upfront pricing. It's no surprises, no those heart palpitating moments where you're like, oh my gosh, that price is not what I agreed to. And you get great last minute options too, with NBA tickets showing up at solid prices. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On for $20 off your purchase. That's code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today, and remember, it's gameday.co, not com. Again, gameday.co. Hiring isn't just about finding someone willing to take the job. It's about finding the right person with the right background who can actually help your business move forward. And if you want candidates who match what you're looking for, Indeed sponsored jobs is the move. Because instead of hoping that the right person stumbles across your post, Indeed helps you match with quality candidates by boosting your job, listening to the people who fit your specific criteria like skills, certifications, and location. If I were hiring, I didn't want someone who could just help. I want someone with real experience who can jump right in. Like I've got people who want to work for my site. I want the people who know what they're doing. I don't want people who are just guessing. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Wrapping things up here at Locked On Boston College, AJ Black here. If you're looking for a second listen, check out Locked On ACC with Kenton Gibbs and Alex Dono. With everything going on in the portal, with coaching changes and all sorts of good stuff, they have it all covered. You can find that on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Now, coaching changes have happened. We've seen BC basically clear out their entire offensive side of the ball and Tim Lewis. And there's been other coaches that have been part of the BC tree in the last 10 years that have also found new jobs, and none bigger than what Jeff Hafley got, as he's the new head coach at Miami with the Dolphins. It only took him 2 years of being a defensive coordinator with the Green Bay Packers. He got his reputation fixed. I don't know how he did it so well, but he got his reputation fixed, became one of the hottest candidates in the NFL this offseason, and got the head coaching job. It's interesting because he's already started to take some old coaches that he worked with him. Now, I thought when he took that job, the first name that would go with him would be Steve Shimko, who is I think he's with the Seahawks right now, but he's not. He ended up taking Bobby Slowick as offensive coordinator, but it's the defensive side of the ball that he went with a familiar name, and that's former BC linebacker and former BC defensive coordinator Sean Duggan, who is now going to be defensive coordinator for the Dolphins. Interesting choice. Duggan has not been a DC yet at the high school, at the pro level, and but he's obviously connected with Hafley from his time at BC, his time at Ohio State, and his time at Green Bay. So they have a new connection. And then he also hired Matt Applebaum, not as offensive line coach, but as assistant offensive line coach. So Applebaum got fired by BC, ends up back with Hafley, who hired him twice. So I could see why that was going to happen. Not a big surprise there. So those are a few. Then today there were two coaches. It was funny. It was like a revolving door at Michigan State. They hired 2 weeks ago. They hired Mike Bajakian, who was a former BC offensive coordinator under Steve Adazio, as their quarterbacks coach. He was the offensive coordinator last year at UMass. And, when you can hire a UMass coach like that, you do it every time, right? Well, they hired him as quarterbacks coach. And then the Cleveland Browns hired Bajakian away. And so what did Michigan State do? They dove right back into that well of BC coordinators who did nothing at BC and hired John McNulty, who was part of BC. He was BC's offensive coordinator that disaster year of 2022. And then he worked at Alabama. I think he was at another school, and I'm totally Rutgers, I think. And now he is going to be the quarterback's coach at Michigan State. So he's another coach that found a new job. And then I want to wrap this up with just the last thought on the offensive coordinator position. I'm going to talk about it on the All Access show, but to me, the fact that they announced that John DiBiase is the first person in this new endowed position that they got a huge gift for says to me that John DiBiase is probably not going to be the offensive coordinator. I think if they were thinking that, they would have named him the offensive coordinator and then announced this gift with whoever they hired as quarterbacks coach. To me, that this seems to me like he's staying at quarterbacks coach. That's just my gut. I don't know anything on that one, but that's just a piece of that there. Thank you all for listening. My name is AJ Black. Again, we're going to go live, not live. We're going to have another show later on today because I'm doing like little 10-minute shows here and there. And I'm trying to get more of the other sports. And there was a very interesting comment made about what BC basketball is doing wrong by Nick Petralia. And I want to go over his 3-point issue with what's going on with BC basketball because I thought it was really good. So I'm going to talk about what he came up with, and that will be up on the YouTube channel sometime on Thursday afternoon. So hopefully you love your BC content because I'm cranking it out. So, and if there's a coaching change, you're going to get a lot of it. So I hope you guys enjoy this. Follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247. Check me out on Facebook, on Instagram, on Threads, and on TikTok. And I'll see you all again tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Boston College, your team every day.